Hey guys, you're watching VaulSC. Thanks for swinging by the YouTube channel as always. Today we're going to be talking about Tunguska. It's going to be the sectorial breakdown and review. I know you guys love these videos and probably I should do them more often, but it's finally time to talk about Tunguska, which was a faction that came out semi-recently, but as always, what happens is Corvus Belli puts out something fresh and new, and people are all, oh my god, frothing at the mouth about it, and then the next thing comes out, and everybody forgets about that. But I haven't forgotten about Tunguska. I wanted to cover them for a little while. I think they're a really interesting faction. It's just obviously these days people are talking about, the third offensive and all of the new changes. But we're going to rewind time. We're going to pretend that Tunguska came out yesterday and have a really good chat about them. So these guys, nomads are all about the three, rogue spaceships which are nomading around space and staying out of range of the human sphere and the influence of, the ominous Aleph overmind, so to speak. And there's been a sectorial for each of the three. Well, there's been a sectorial for Criusor and Bakunin, the other two spaceships, but finally the third one. So they've got all three there, the trifecta. In game terms, I just want to come right out and sort of give you the conclusion of the video, like, up front, and that is that I think that these guys are an average power level faction. I give them a 5 out of 5. 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. Sorry. A lot of you guys may dispute that, but, we'll have a think about it, we'll have a talk about it, and, really, if you want to say that a faction's good, you've got to sort of, tell us a list of factions that are weaker than them. I mean, if you want to go onto like a notepad and write down the name of every single sectorial and vanilla faction released and try and rank them, you'll find that it's quite hard to, find out which one's at the bottom half. It's really easy to say, oh, this faction's decisive, it's good, but it's not very easy to sort of rank them relative to each other, and that's difficult. But that's our job. That's what we're going to be doing. Having said that, though, 5 out of 10, a medium-level faction, that's a good thing. You actually want your factions to be at that average level. You don't want a new sectorial to come out and some new models for it, and for it to be really kind of weak and having, less of a good time compared to the more powerful sectorials. You don't want that. But then again, you don't want your sectorial to be so broken and powerful that people just, go, well, he was playing that one, so of course they won. So you want it to be the Goldilocks faction. You want it to be just right, and I really feel that the old Tunguska is about there. One thing that, well, let's just talk about first of all what you're gonna have to bear in mind if you're gonna be seriously investing time into these guys. So this is a faction with some pretty clear weaknesses. So you don't have access to any of the cheap cheerleading warbands or anything like that. You can't take the Nomad Jaguars or the Morlocks, for example, guys like that, who are just so good in Corregidor and Bakunin and Vanilla. So you're not going to have a deployment zone full of these guys with chain rifles and smoke grenades and providing you extra little orders and being good in close combat. You're just not going to have access to that, and that is a really big deal. This is a faction that has no access to MSV2 whatsoever, so you are not going to be able to put out a unit that can just see through all of their maze of smoke grenades if you're playing Ariadne or Hakislam, for example. You may have a little bit of trouble dealing with, their TO sniper, for example. Although there are other means to do that in this faction, you don't have that straight-up method of MSV2, so just bear that in mind before you jump headfirst into these guys. And thirdly, it's really hard to come up with a list that is, really high order count. Most of the models that you want to take are average to high cost, so you're going to have to manage that well and, play a list that can be a bit fragile at times. Then again, if you want to play limited insertion, I find that their options for limited insertion lists are a little bit clunky compared to what other factions can come up with. Their big, strong core link teams compared with the ones that other people could field, a little bit lackluster. But let's look at the positive side of it. What are the strengths of this faction? Okay, so finally, Nomads get jammers in the form of the Hecklers. We'll talk about them soon, and you can take 3 of them, whereas you can't take 3 of them in vanilla. So this is one way to get 3 jammers on the field, and jammers being extremely strong for area denial. One of the most powerful attacks in the game. In terms of capability as to how they can change the game, as opposed to like burst and strength damage, that sort of thing. So Hecklers, you can take 3 of them. The other thing that obviously these guys have going for them is that the Securitates, you can run a link team with a Grenzer added. Pretty common nowadays that a lot of sectorials are getting the opportunity to add a heavy infantry model to a link team. But with this guy, even though he doesn't have 2 wounds, he's at least armor 3, and the great thing is you've got a Ballistic Skill 16 guy with MSV 1, and either a missile launcher or a sniper rifle is probably what you'll load him out as. So that ARO right there is pretty super strong, and it's not hugely costly either. And then, of course, there's the hacking game. So with Merry Problems introduced and being able to run a sectorial that has plenty of opportunities for repeaters and pitches and fast-moving bots, that kind of thing, they're really, really strong in that regard. And also Raul Specter, the opportunity to take the sky. We thought he was only going to be available for the Mercenary faction. Suddenly he shows up in Tunguska, and we'll talk about why he's actually a really useful unit. So if you're going to be playing a lot of Tunguska, painting the models, collecting them, go to tournaments, playing in competitive games, just bear in mind you're going to have to downplay those really severe weaknesses, and you're going to have to make the most of those really powerful strengths. And that's the way you want it to be. I mean, when you're playing Infinity, you don't want to just have it, a no-brainer, this is how you do it. You want to be going through the game, solving a lot of problems, start to finish, and that's probably what you're going to get from this faction. So I give that the thumbs up. I like this faction as a result. Just before we dive into the left to right summary of all the profiles, which I know that all of you guys know and love, let's just briefly talk about some of the model packs available. So here we go here with the starter set. I see nothing wrong with beginning with the starter set, just because the 3 Securitates are probably going to be in every single game you play. The Heckler is going to be probably in every single list that you play, at least one Heckler. The Holloman, I think that he's playable even by himself. He's playable in a link team. They're decent. I don't think the Hollomen are the best unit ever, but they're really, really solid because of Super Jump and because of their decent stats and their reasonably affordable cost. I'm not the hugest fan of the Criusor Borax, but a lot of people are. There's definitely a case for playing him a fair bit. So the fact that he's in the starter set shouldn't deter anybody from buying it. With the Securitate pack, if you've already got the starter set and you're just sort of doubling up with this, you may not use all of the Securitates, but it's still pretty decent. I mean, you're getting that other Grenzer in there. You're doubling up a little bit. I think that there's definitely a case to be made for either buying this or the starter set. If, for example, you just went with this, well, you'd run a link team with 3 Securitates, the Grenzer, and then your 4th member would be either a proxied Securitate, or you will have actually run Raul Specter in it, or Perseus, the Myrmidon. So if you haven't bought the starter set and you've bought the Securitate box instead, or the other way around, you may not necessarily need both, right? But seriously, other than those 2, generally you're going to be wanting to go out and buy a bunch of remotes, just because they're useful all the time. So grab some Zons, because they're going to be used as transconductors most of the time, and there's never going to be a decent list that doesn't include the cheap orders to back them up. You're going to want what do you call those people? The Dactaris, more often than not. In fact, I would recommend them just about every single game. And from there, we'll have a look at some of the viable sort of combinations you can come up with and run through it. So let's get started. Miranda Ashcroft. As usual, when I review these sectorials, my word of advice to people is that sure, the Mercenaries are playable, they can do work, but whenever you compare them in their points bracket to other things you can get in the sectorial, it's just no comparison, right? So let's just see if we can come up with an example real quick. A Heckler with a jammer for 23 points, or Miranda for the same cost basically. Well, the Heckler's in Camo state. He deploys further up the board and he's got a jammer, and he's also got a fast panda to help your hackers. Whereas Miranda, she's just a model with ODD and pretty boring stats really. So there's just no comparison there. If you add in a bounty hunter, sure. I mean, if if you take one of the more expensive bounty hunters, well, that could just be another Heckler, couldn't it? Or you spend a little bit more points, you've got a Spectre. Spectre's a bit more costly, but I think you get the drift. I mean, a lot of the bots are sort of relatively that cost, and they can be buffed with the hacking supportware, whereas the bounty hunter can't benefit from it. I don't really feel like I need to sell anybody on this. They're really just not going to provide as much value as everything else. So let's get started on some of the Nomad units then. So Bakun and Clockmakers, these guys are a bit on the expensive side because you normally wouldn't want to pay 18 points for a engineer. What he gets for that 18 points is a whopping willpower 15, which is pretty rare as far as engineers go. So he's costly, but if you're going to do a lot of engineering work, he's worth it. I would only take a Clockmaker if I'm building a list around the Salamandra TAG, or I'm really going to be using a lot of these Zons and bots as, you know, AROs or attacking pieces, which wouldn't always be that likely. Hollomen have structure points, so possibly if you're running a full, you know, massive core link team of them, then sure, I think the Clockmaker is probably going to be in there because you're going to be wanting to revive, you know, your missile launcher or a Spitfire or something if you're firing from your deployment zone and take some unlucky crits and want to get the team back up and running. And there's nothing worse than having to move out with a group of 4 when it could be a group of 5, and the Clockmaker will solve that problem. And of course, if you're taking him, he's going to be a specialist, which goes out and presses buttons some of the time. But at 18 points, he's really going to be, you know, a choice for those lists which are really relying on the structure-based units to do the work in terms of attacking and defending. Daktari, though, I would imagine you'd see a Daktari in almost every list because you're going to be running the Securitates more often than not, and the Grenzer for that defensive link team setup. Secondly, though, most of the time you're going to have either a Interventor or Merry Problems, or both. And the good thing about having a Daktari there is that, I mean, Merry and the Interventor both have, you know, a one wound, and if you're doing that much hacking, there's going to be situations where it's your hacker versus their hacker. You've got a big advantage, but they suddenly get really lucky, maybe roll a crit with their hacking roll, and your hacker goes down. But if you've got a Daktari right there, you revive that hacker, and you continue with a cyber war. And that benefits you so much because let's pretend you've got a 75% chance of winning a hacking attempt, and that 25% scenario comes up and you fail it. The doctor revives you, you have another go. You go from 75 to almost, you know, 100%, you know, likelihood of actually winning that cyber war, and that's what you want. You want to reduce your risks in this game. So for that reason, the Daktari is amazing. Only time I wouldn't take a Daktari is if I'm taking some sort of extreme list, like, you know, 5 Hollomen or 4 Hollomen plus a Stempler and other bots and so forth, and I'm not really going to use anything that needs to be revived that's of value. But yeah, more often than not, Daktari is going to be there, and if you're starting Tunguska, probably recommend that you have one. So the Heckler, this is a new sort of thing, really, and it really baffles me that their solution to jammers, or I don't know if they call it a solution, with Hakkislam being so strong with their Gazamatiwa jammers, they're deciding to spread that out and give jammers to more factions. So now Nomads have them, and now Pan-Oceania have them, which I don't really feel that comfortable with, because jammers aren't a particularly fun sort of mechanic to play with or against. You have these situations where you're playing capture and protect or looting and sabotaging, and you've got that objective like on your deployment line, and your opponent actually has to come over there and in some cases actually get away. And unless they've got things which ignore the jammer, or you can just shut that down, and it's a massive advantage, and there's no real way to play around that, which I find is kind of lame. Also in objective room based missions like engineering deck, armory, if you're the guy with the jammers, you're in the midfield, they're trying to enter the room and they get isolated before they can get in there, they can't spend any more orders. Well, that's just really kind of crappy. You're only going to see more Krakot Renegades as a result of it. Ironically, Securitates have veterans, so they can get around it. Morats needed a bit of a buff, so I think one good thing about jammers being around is that, you know, Morats actually go up in stock price, so to speak. But overall, I don't really think that jammers should be as strong as they are in the game, I would have preferred to see a bit of a nerf to the jammer. I mean, even if it was quite a severe nerf, like if you said the jammer, you know, when you first isolate it, it lasts for the rest of that turn and the following player turn, then it expires. That would at least weaken it a little bit. It'd still be extremely strong, and you still take them just as much as before. But I mean, just trying to give an example, even like the damage, let's say it was damage 10 instead of damage 13 that you had to beat with your BTS save. And look, because of all of this, when you look at the Heckler profiles, every single Heckler profile is amazing. Like the boarding shotgun, Red Fury, combi rifle, Cybermines, Killer Hacker. These guys are just fantastic. But I would pretty much never recommend taking any of them except the jammer, just because the jammer's so useful and so strong. If you take one of the other ones, like the Red Fury or the combi rifle, boarding shotgun, you are adding a unit to your army, which is supposed to be doing a role, which can be done by other models in your army, so there's an opportunity there. But the jammer is something that you can't achieve with any other profile in this faction, so why wouldn't you take the jammer? The real question is, how many do you take? There are going to be some lists where maybe you take 3. I've been practicing with a list that only has 1, just because I feel like I can spot the part of the table where the jammer is going to be most effective. Just have that one guy there, and he's useful enough. If you're going to a tournament where one of the missions is capture and protect, or looting and sabotaging, or maybe engineering deck or armory, or if you're going to like a 1 or 2 day tournament where 2 of said missions are in there, then maybe one of your Tunguska lists should be a list that has 3 jammers, especially if you know that the most talented and difficult to beat opponents at that event are likely to be running lists which don't have a lot of veteran. So yeah, but the Heckler's really, really powerful. Don't forget, limited camouflage doesn't allow you to have real camouflage after you've popped yourself, but you got mimetism, so you're still -3. You'd always be wanting to use that forward deployment. That's one thing Ghazi's don't have, although one thing Hecklers don't have is willpower 15 and the ability to impetuous up the board and throw smoke and then jammer. But that's still really, really good. One cool thing is that if a Heckler is having a bit of a jammer off with another unit, at least he's got BTS 3 to try and win that little jammer buzz out. Let's move on. Mary problems. So when Mary first was introduced to us and Army 6 went live and I read her stats, I thought, well, here we go again. This is going to be a model where it's good at doing sort of 3 different things and it's costed as though it's actually going to be doing those things. Whereas in actual games, she's probably only going to be doing one particular role, like killer hacking, for example, and that's not worth the 30 points. The more that I thought about her profile and her possibilities in the battlefield, the more and more she grew on me. And right now, after thinking about her for quite a long time, I would say that she's one of the best things in this faction, and I would take her more often than not, like well over 50% of the time. And that is because if you think about it, she's got like 3 things she can do. She's either going to be specializing in killer hacking, or she's going to be affecting the enemy with her assault hacking device, or she is going to be actually, going and fighting with her ODD, climbing plus, assault pistol, submachine gun, zapper, that kind of thing, helped out with forward deployment, and obviously the maneuverability of forward deployment level 1 and climbing plus. So there's really 3 roles for her there, and if you look at her points cost of 30 with 0.5 SWCs, if she can do 2 out of 3 of those in most of your games, of course she's worth 30 points. Imagine a game where she has a face-to-face role with an enemy killer hacker, most likely wins because she's got lightning and BTS 6 and whip 14, and then deters a lot of their remotes and heavy infantry from crossing a repeater area because she's got that assault hacking available, so it makes it harder for them. If she has done that during a game, she was worth that 30 points. Or let's talk about another situation where they don't have any killer hackers at all, so you're not really hacking enemy hackers, but you manage to either isolate or immobilize an important remote or heavy infantry model, and in the final turn of the game, she goes out, shoots somebody with a submachine gun, presses a button. Was that worth 30 points? Yeah, I really think it is. Now, some of the time, she's going to do none of those 3. No hacking, no shooting. She's going to be sitting there, not worth it. But for the number of times that comes up, you're also going to have situations where she gets like the trifecta, all 3. She hacks killer hackers, she assault hacks people, and she moves out, shoots people, and presses buttons, in which case she's just worth her weight in gold. So I love her. I'd really recommend taking her, and I can't wait for them to come up with a really sweet model for her as well. Miranda Ashcroft, we already talked about, Swing the Skipper. Puppetmaster Company. So this is such an interesting unit because it has these little puppet bots which you can run around, and I think a lot of people are looking forward to trying them. I know you guys aren't really going to like hearing this, but what I do here with the Puppetmaster is I just take a basic 12-point submachine Puppetmaster and I leave it at that. I don't even bother with the puppet bots. And the reason for that is that for 12 points you get a cheerleader who just does nothing but provides you an order every turn, which is worth it. Normally you'd only expect to pay sort of 7 to 10 points for that. But with counterintelligence, you've got, you're spending an extra maybe 5 points for that ability, thereabouts. And anytime you're going first, you get an additional order. So for that, I think the Puppetmaster is just purely worth it. Yes, you could go and take the mine layer or the hacking device, but the thing, if you're making it a hacker, well, there are other models that can be doing that. You can have a Securitate do that and still be in a link team and do that. You can have the Interventor do that kind of thing if you want to. And Mine Layer, well, it's just an SWC, so if you really feel the need to defend your deployment zone, sure, go ahead. I mean, it's maybe worth it sometimes. But the puppet bots, my issue with the puppet bots is that if you're going to be using them as the attacking piece, remember that the puppet bots don't actually add any additional regular orders to your lineup, and they apparently take up slots on Army 6, although I don't know if that's been fixed. Let me just quickly check. If I take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Securitates and Puppetmaster, let's say I take this guy, then I start adding these boys in. Yeah, so every time you add one, the counter's not actually going up, so they're not actually providing any additional regular orders. And also, sorry. Let's just do a quick test of this. Yeah, so they don't actually take up slots in the group, so that's fine. So a little bit more like proxies in that regard. But just coming back to my little spiel about what these guys do, it's cool that they've got, obviously, the low tech, but this is a model which cannot receive, apparently, assisted fire level 2. So you can't, well, assisted fire means you'd have marksmanship level 2. So if you're going to be using this model in the role of attacking, of course it's good at doing that, but you'd never want a unit doing a role that another unit can do so much better. So if you're moving out and attacking with a Red Fury guy, sure, you can invest those orders into a guy who's BS12 to do that, but you've got a perfectly good Zhan-Nautica that could do that, but have mimetism as it does that. Or a Holloman who's BS13 and can take hits if you get unlucky, for example. Or you could have a Cyclone Sputnik that can have assisted fire, which makes it way, way, way better. So even though the puppet bots can get the work done, the problem is that they're not going to be very efficient when it comes to those shootouts, because you're not really getting the best ballistic skill in your faction or the best abilities, for example, and you're missing out. So that's why I personally wouldn't really go that way. You're really just increasing the cost of the Puppetmaster without getting any additional orders. So I've never really particularly liked them. You guys might find them more useful than I think that I'll find them, and I haven't really tested them out. So we'll see. But the basic Puppetmaster on his own, yeah, you could take the standard dude, the mine layer, the hacker. All three of them are fine. My preference is the submachine gun by himself, but there's definitely an argument and a case to be made for the mine layer and the hacker. Raul Specter. So, interestingly, when I first heard about this guy in Starco, I thought, okay, I'm only ever going to use the AD combat jump guy because he's actually legit. The fact that he's irregular doesn't matter that much because he's going to be dropping in with his own order anyway, and then he's going to be activating, and he's probably unlikely to survive after that turn, right? And even if he does, he's still going to spend that irregular order on himself, not anybody else. At Physical 13, really, really good at dropping onto the table, and you're likely to be playing hackers in this faction, so a control jump is also a probability. Then when he does get there, the good thing about him is that with Mimetism, he can win face-to-face rolls a lot more effectively, and NWI is a skill that you want on a unit that is going to be active. If you're an ARO piece with NWI, the enemy's just going to shoot you with their shock ammunition and you're going to die. But with Raul, he can choose to go after targets that don't have any shock. So he can walk his way around mines and not come into range of them. He can shoot at remotes before they get upgraded to marksmanship level 2 and that sort of thing. And that way, he can make a lot of usage out of his NWI. So it's like having 2 wounds, really. Boarding shotgun, fantastic weapon for a model that's going to be dropping in their back lines or coming on the side. Nanopulsar, fantastic for defending himself when it comes to their turn and they're trying to go after him. Drop res, normally not that great, but when you're landing in their zone, it's excellent. The EM close combat weapon is brilliant because he's got NBW, for +3 or to ignore their martial arts or what have you with CC22. So most of the time he's going to be attacking with CC25. So what you might be able to do is just get into a position to attack a tag or something to that effect, heavy infantry, and really just wreck them with that close combat hit. 33 points is pretty expensive, but it's definitely worth it if you're going to go all in on Raul. He's a specialist, but I don't imagine him doing very much specialist stuff in their deployment zone. Having said that, if you're going to be conservative with them and bring them on much later, there might be an opportunity to press some buttons or do some specialist type things with them. Just be careful about the fact that in some missions, the enemy gets kills, points for getting more specialist kills than you. So if he's going to be dropping down on one of those missions, try and at least take out 1 or 2 specialists on your way through because they're going to kill you and he's going to count towards the tally there. Doesn't look like he has any smoke grenades or anything. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about, though, is the Spectre FTO regular, where he's got a multi-rifle. Now, by himself, I don't really think this guy's really worth it, just hanging out in your deployment zone with just a multi-rifle, just BS-12. I don't really think he's really worth it for that. But one way you can rig it is you can go Spectre multi-rifle and then grab some Securitates, right? So let's take the boarding shotgun repeater, the Hacker, and say an HMG. And let's say we add Perseus in there as well. So the FTO. So this is 126 points for a link team. But this link team packs a lot of punch. Almost as much of a punch as some pain train like link teams do. Because when you're on the full 5-man, Raul he's what, BS-15 with his multi-rifle, and he's got NWI with Mimetism, so as a point man fighter, he's really, really very good. Perseus is coming along with your link team, and he does provide them smoke grenades, so if they're going to be coming around a corner into line of sight of some really deadly ARO, I mean, Perseus can get the grenades in there first. Another thing I quite like is that the Securitates being veterans and ignoring the isolation for jammer, you could get quite close to a location, throw the smoke grenades in, the Securitates go on first, Raul and Perseus sort of follow up and stay out of jammer range, and you can get some work done, especially since your Securitate with a repeater can move in. Maybe you've got melee problems at the back, doing hacking through that Securitate. So it's quite a technical play, quite a technical link team, but if you know what you're doing, there's probably quite a lot that can be achieved by that. So this is one setup that I'd be quite interested to try. I don't think that it's as capable. I don't think it's going to be as powerful in the long run as just running 4 Securitates, Grenzer, Sniper, and then maybe a role as the drop trooper. But this is a very interesting link team and definitely something that should be explored. Speaking of Securitates, okay, so these guys as a line infantry are a little bit on the expensive side. But, I mean, the only drawback is that you're playing a faction overall that kind of is desperately needing and crying out for some cheaper stuff, and your line infantry are a bit more expensive than you'd want them to be. Having said that, though, I mean, 13 points for a lieutenant, you're getting basically a Fusilier that has willpower 14 instead of 12, right? And is a veteran. So, apparently that's worth 3 points. Maybe it is. I mean, I personally would prefer a lieutenant for that Fusilier for that role, but there's going to be a lot of times where veteran actually is nice. I mean, having your lieutenant not isolated is pretty good, and willpower 14 obviously for your specialists within the team. I mean, your hacker and stuff like that. will make a difference. It's good to mix them with the Grenzer, so although I don't have too much more to say about this, I mean, the Feuerbach's also going to be a strong option, but I don't really think the Feuerbach's going to be something I'd be taking because the role of the ARO is played by this guy over here who has the multi-sniper. And then the Securitate Lieutenant be in there, maybe you know, a paramedic, possibly a repeater if you plan on moving out with them. And I think an HMG because it's, you know, cheap 1 point, BS12, and you know, it's not too much to pay for really good sweeping face-to-face role winning ability. So yeah, Securitate's pretty cool. I like the models for them, and you know, they're a little bit, you know, costly for line troopers, but you know, that's what you're gonna be working with, so you're gonna be taking them more often than not. Let's go to the Interventor. So we're not going to have too much to say about the Interventor because these guys have been around for so long, and you know, people have seen them in games so often. They're very, very common. Just quickly, the reasons why you may take an Interventor in this faction will be the same reasons that you might want to take one in Nomads, for example, in Vanilla. And the reasons why you might pass up on it would be the same here as well. A lot of people like making the Interventor the Lieutenant because you can spend the Lieutenant's order on hacking or going Cybermask or something like that. Some people don't bring an Interventor because maybe they like, you know, the points spent elsewhere. I see a pretty good argument for taking Mary because unlike the Interventor, you pay 30 points and she can do 2 different hacking things, and she's way better at fighting than the Interventor is. But if you are only going to be hacking and the only thing you're going to be doing is stuff like white noise and you know, the supportware, then taking the hacking device plus is a bit cheaper than Mary, and the Interventor is a little bit better at it because she's got willpower 15, BTS 9. Making her the Lieutenant is just a tiny bit risky if you come up against an opponent that manages to kill her. Imagine a game where you show up with the Interventor, your opponent's playing Onyx, they decide to go first, Kernau moves up, fires a pitcher right next to your Interventor, and then starts hacking you with Maestro, and like he's got +3, -3 for the +3 to him, -3 to you for the Maestro. You're trying to hack back with Sucker Punch or something like that. He's got a deflector, and he's got like a Doctor Worm next to him to revive him, and eventually gets through your BTS 9 and makes you unconscious, and then your Lieutenant's dead. So just be careful about that. You can take the Killer Hacker version. She's quite cheap, but yeah, it just depends on sort of what you have working around in your list. I think most of these profiles are pretty viable, to be honest. But again, I mean, these guys have been around since the dawn of time. Don't have anything new to add to them, really. Warcore, Warcore's a Warcore. Don't have too much sectorial specific to say, except for the fact that this is a faction which really needs, you know, cheap models. And having a Warcore backed in there, let's say you've got a group of 10, group of 4, and a Warcore, that Warcore's irregular order might be changed into a regular order with a command token very often, just because you're so order-starved with this faction. The Zhan-Nautica is an opportunity for us to talk about a brand new unit, and there's no model for this yet at the time of me filming this video. But yeah, I quite like the Zhan-Nautica. The closest comparison elsewhere in this game is the Aragoto, because the Aragoto is also, you know, regular, impetuous, and also can have a Spitfire, boarding shotgun combo rifle, and assault hacking device. So very, very similar. Also has mimetism, that kind of thing. But the extra points that you pay for the Zhan-Naut grant you the smoke grenade launcher and the chain rifle, both of which are extremely useful. So in this particular faction, I would probably take the Zhan-Nautica a higher proportion of time than I would take the Aragoto in JSA, for example. Especially given the fact that there aren't that many fast attack options in this faction. So you've got the Holloman, they're pretty fast, 6'2" with super jump, makes them decent. You've got I think the Meteor Zon, which can land on their side of the table, or Raul. Besides those guys, well, actually, no, I tell a lie, the Cyclone's pretty fast too. So there are some fast attack options. I think the Zhan-Nautica is the fastest if you look at in terms of pure movement speed. But the good thing is that she's got Spitfire and Mimetism, so that's a really good combination. Makes her about as strong when it comes to attacking things as, say, the Cyclone with assisted fire. But she's got that utility of the smoke light grenade launcher plus the chain rifle. It's just a shame that there's no MSV2 elsewhere in the faction to combo with the smoke grenade launcher. But I think that's a really cool combo, and of course, let's not forget that if she dismounts from the bike's still coming with her as a G-Sync trooper with a chain rifle light smoke grenade launcher. So there are going to be some situations where she can tuck inside of a building, the bike's parked outside, able to defend the door with the chain rifle, which is frankly really cool. And one thing that she's got going for her that, for example, the Holloman and the Stempler don't, is that you can use the Impetuous move to just roll 12 inches up the board, and you're already like at the halfway zone, ready to actually start working with the Spitfire and get firing. The Spitfire is my favorite, my favorite profile here, just because she's there for sweeping. You want high burst, you're spending orders in turn 1 to get the job done. The boarding shotgun range is a bit too close for that kind of thing. You're going to actually need some beyond 8-inch shots a lot of the time. And the hacker, well, I mean, you've got Mary problems and Interventors for that. You don't really want to do that with your bike, especially since you're going to be coming so close to their killer hackers on their side of the board. Okay, the Grenzer. So this guy was always a maligned unit. He was always around in the old Operation Ice Storm starter set, and once people sort of got used to Infinity and playing Infinity quite a lot, people realized that he's quite an average model, just because he was slow. He didn't have MSV2, it was just MSV1, and if he just got shot at by some random HMG, he was likely to go down, and in the active turn, not much better. But the story's a lot different when you're in a 5-man link team, because suddenly you're BS16, and they can't use Mimetism Troopers to take you on, with 2 dice in the reactive turn. The Sniper Rifle, 3 dice in the active turn is really meaty. With Armor 3 and cover, quite likely he's not going to be taking 2 wounds at once, so you can just doctor him back up. So I think he's become an essential, linchpin of this faction now. The thing is, he's there for that role, right? He's there for that long-range shootout at the start of the game, which is why I wouldn't really recommend taking any of these other profiles, just because the job of that medium-range shootout is going to be done and handled by your other troopers, like your Zhan-Nautica, your Holloman, your Cyclone Sputnik, and so on, and even the Securitates themselves kind of handle it, right? The real question is whether to go for a multi-sniper rifle or a missile launcher. Both are definitely viable, and the missile launcher is 3 points cheaper. The missile launcher punishes the enemy harder if they fail their face-to-face roll trying to crack him. It also hurts them if they have impetuous troopers coming around the corner and they take the template, forces them to spread out a lot more. And obviously, it's got anti-material for blowing up objectives. The thing about the sniper rifle, though, is it's got a better minimum range of 16 rather than 20 or 24 or whatever it is. And it's got a bigger maximum range as well. Not by much, but that does come up sometimes. And in the active turn, you get 3 dice rather than 2 when you're shooting it. So those advantages there, I think, are a bigger deal than the little advantages you get with the missile launcher. It does depend on opponent, does depend on table, does depend on scenario a little bit. But from all the games that I've played, my sort of intuitive sense tells me that the multi-sniper rifle is just slightly the better option there. But if you think the missile launcher is the better one, I can definitely see that there's a very strong case for that, like really strong case for that. The Criusor Borax, okay, so this is the big heavy infantry bad boy of the faction, and with full auto level 2, he's quite fearsome. The only thing that really I criticize about this guy is that you're giving the job of sweeping the table with your HMG or multi-rifle or whatever you're doing, Mark 12, for a huge wad of points. And that level of firepower can be imitated by other troopers at a much reduced cost. So let's imagine they've got a TR bot, or they've got a guy in a link team with a missile launcher, or they've got a TO sniper, or whatever it is. Yeah, the Criusor Borax, the one that you want to throw at that, and he's got the best chance of taking it down. But once we crunch the numbers, a basic Securitate in a link team with an HMG isn't going to have that much less of a chance than the Criusor does. Just imagine it, like the Criusor is shooting at their TR bot or whatever it is, the Q drone or something like that. He's got ballistic skill 13, but the Securitate's got ballistic skill 15. They've both got the same gun. They're both firing at burst 5. The only difference is the enemy's -3 against the Criusor, so it's close. I mean, you're getting +2 ballistical with the Securitate, but -3 for the enemy with the Criusor. So it's pretty close, but the Securitate's 21 points and 1 SWC, and the Criusor is 54 points and 2 SWCs. So if you look at it that way, he's a bit expensive, isn't he? Well, look at the fact that he's armor 5 and wounds 2. The Securitate doesn't have anywhere near that. Armor and wounds are stats that you want, really, when you are taking hits, when you're being shot at, when you're reacting. So is he really good as a reactor piece, like holding down the fort? Yeah, he's got ballistical 13, HMG, good range band, and they're -3, blah, 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 blah. But compare that to your Grenzer with a multi-sniper rifle, ballistical 16, 2 dice, MSV 1, and he's half the points, right? Or 20 points less. So that's my argument, really, for the jobs being done by other people in the faction, as opposed to the Criusor. He can be a duo, that's fine. He can be a special Hurry's fire team. It's just very, very expensive. If we go HMG and, I don't know, multi-rifle, so we've at least got some shock, or even, what's the cheapest? Multi-rifle's the cheapest. And then we take one Holloman. What's a nice cheap Holloman we could have who'd be useful here? I quite like the deflector guy, or the guy with the pitcher, for example, multi-rifle pitcher. This is a link team that costs 140 points, but there's only 3 people with the 3 orders. It's just super expensive, and you really shoot the list in the foot, I think, if you do that. So, yep, the fearsome on the table. I'm always worried when I see one, but I remind myself that the opponent who's paid for one of these guys is probably making other sacrifices in their list. So that's my criticism of them. The Holloman, this is a newer unit as well. A lot of people compare these guys favorably to the Mobile Brigada. And it's not really very fair if you do that comparison, because these guys are a bit quicker with super jump, and 6.2 is probably preferable for this kind of unit. And similar sort of defense, armor 4, BTS 6. And yeah, super jump is just really, really strong for a model that's going to be going out and attacking and sweeping. They don't have access to an HMG though. So that's one thing they're missing, but with that sort of mobility, you may not necessarily need it. So with these guys, I really like running just the Spitfire by himself. You'd use him as the attacking piece, where at the start of the game he's walking across the table. It might take a couple of orders of 8 inches worth of movement, 6.2, 6.2, but when he starts attacking, the initial speed value of 6 is really useful, because the super jump up on top of something, the 6 is much better than 4. And when you're going move, shoot, move, shoot, move, shoot, he covers a lot more distance with that stat of 6 compared to move, 4, shoot, move, 4, shoot, move, 4, shoot. Being very well armored, armor 4 structure points 2 means that if he takes a random crit, he can keep going for a bit. I love that they've given him a chain colt as well as the Spitfire, so if he's just sitting there on the side of the table and they come after him, he can defend himself in that reactor turn really, really well. Now, there is an argument for going with a multi-rifle, because you've got shock ammunition there and a pitcher. So if you're really heavy on, say, let's say you've got Merry Problems and an Interventor, some really strong hacking at the back, having that pitcher as he moves across, blast people with a multi-rifle. Don't forget that he can super jump and then fire the pitcher, which is really amazing. Some people think that the missile launcher by himself is really strong. I would just prefer to stick with the Grenzer if he's just going to be staying in the deployment zone. But there is the possibility here of going for a list based around the core team, and this is a really exciting list to me. So missile launcher, Spitfire, multi-rifle pitcher, and that pitcher's just godlike when you're in a link team, right? So BS 16, hitting the pitcher on 19s if it's close, suddenly got a pitcher there, and then you're hacking them, right? And then you want a specialist, right? Because you need a specialist in a link team like this if you're building the army around it. In fact, the Stempler can be a specialist as well. And the cool thing is they've given the Stemplers on super jump so we can actually keep up with the Holloman. He's actually faster than them, but even if they're all moving 1 and then shooting, he's got 6 as his first movement stat. So with them in place, you chuck in Merry Problems, for example. You don't need the Puppetmaster because counterintelligence is not going to matter if you're going limited insertion. You probably want at least one Heckler. It's great to have a forward-observing Spectre out there. In fact, if we make the Spectre the killer hacker, that's going to take advantage of the pitcher, most likely. What are we missing? Lieutenant. If I just chuck in... In fact, let's take away Merry Problems. Let's put the Interventor in this list to be the Lieutenant, because she's going to make use of the Pitcher in that case, and she's going to have Sucker Punch as an upgrade as well. We've still got another couple points. Maybe an Engineer, a Clockmaker if we're going second. We're defending with a Spitfire, and there's still a ton of points left to fill up that 9. I'm sure you guys can come up with something really awesome to slot in there. But there's so many things it could be. You could even throw in like a multi-sniper rifle Spectre, and with those extra points left over, you could just upgrade one of these guys. So the powerful thing about this kind of pain train is that you want to take first turn, you've got a full 10 orders, and it's just so much harder for them to hide. So the Hollomen spend maybe 4 orders crossing the battlefield, and then they're starting to pick off a few, arrow pieces with the Spitfire, right? Who's going to wreck them. And then to get to the meat of their army, and maybe even their lieutenant, you can start jumping onto things. And that's something that like a Wooming Pain Train or whatever can't do. So that's really, really strong. 2 weaknesses though. Even though your list is very powerful hacking-wise, if you do move the Hollomen within range of a hacking device, they are going to be slowed down a little bit. They're going to have to probably reset. There's a possibility of them getting hacked. And the other thing is that when you compare what this list can do to the new Tactical Awareness list that Morats can do, and Invincible Army, you look at that and you feel a bit jealous, because once your 10 orders run out, you are going to be a bit stranded and your opponent's got a chance to retaliate. But this, depending on terrain and scenario and opponents, this list can just be absolutely crushing. So have a bit of fun with it. If you buy the Holloman starter pack, and if you've got a Stempler Zond, recommend trying something like this out. Obviously not this exact list, but some variation of it. Cool. Salamandra Squadron. Again, this is a model that you have to sort of build a list around. Is he good? Is he okay? I think he's okay, but a couple of problems with him. In the active turn, when you're moving out with a tag, your opponent's generally going to know that you've got something like this coming. So you spend a few orders moving to position, you're shooting some stragglers, you're taking out their war core, you're killing their flash pulse spots, maybe you kill a member of their link team, and you're in the middle of the table, and then you've got to spend the rest of your battle group's orders moving back to your deployment zone. Because if you don't, he's stranded, he's going to be a sitting duck, he will die. So he probably will only have a turn where he kills 3 or 4 models if your opponent's playing well, as they should, deploying well. And then it just becomes a bit of a struggle. Unlike other tags, his gun's not very good in the reactive turn because he's firing 1 shot, it does 1 damage, whereas a lot of other tags have that multi-round where it's an explosive round in the reactive turn, which is really, really strong. Absolutely, he's brutal with the HRMC in the attacking turn, but if your opponent's wise enough, they can generally keep their vulnerable stuff, out of line of sight of him in total cover. So he's a bit difficult in that sense, but if you're willing to support him properly and be very committal and decisive with him, sure, it can be good. But this is a model for a limited insertion list, and if you go into a tournament, maybe one list would have this guy and the other list would have something else, maybe the Hollomen, and you probably want to crank them out if you can see an opportunity to move across and get some good fire lanes. Like if they're going to be forced to have a deployment zone where there's going to be a way to come to the middle of the table and find those angles to get a lot of people, that's when he's really, really going to shine. If not, if it's too closed and tightly locked up, I don't think you're going to get a full 90 points worth of value out of him. Okay, we're nearing the point where we talk about a lot of the bots, and to be honest, these bots aren't really sectorial specific. All of the sectorials and nomads can basically take these guys. My advice would be that you want to chuck in 2 transconductor zones in every list that's going to be, a non-limited insertion list, because you need them to be cheerleaders. Plus the repeaters and the flash pulses that defend your deployment zone. They're so good. Some of the time you're going to be wanting just take the baggage bots as well, just because they are a cheap order, which you desperately need. The Meteor Zond, he's great at dropping down and having the assisted fire from the from his own repeater. However, I don't think that he's going to be a better choice than Raul Specter, because Raul actually is pretty powerful there with his drop bears, boarding shotgun, nanopulsar, and his close combat. He's better at winning face-to-face rolls most likely than the Meteor is, once you factor in the boarding shotgun. So if you're going to go down that avenue, I'd go Raul. But he is there. If you like the idea of having an assisted fire remote showing up on their side of the table, he's not bad. The basic reactions on with the HMG has always been decent with assisted fire. I feel, though, that the ARO role is going to be handled by the Grenzer, and the attacking role will be handled by a Securitate HMG or a Holloman or something like that. But if you've got the points for him, if you've got a way to slot him in there, I haven't found a way, but if you find a way, it's fine. Climbing Plus is still valid. Cyclone Sputnik, if you don't particularly like the Zhan-Nautica for some reason, you don't want to take a Holloman, the Spitfire picture is really powerful. Assisted fire on the Spitfire, Climbing Plus, again, great attacking piece, and that picture is going to create more opportunities for melee problems and your Interventor. Pretty cool that he can take forward deployment level 1. I think that's a really great buff. So if he's going to be your attacking piece, make him your reserve trooper and have him deploy a little bit further out behind some cover, and then to start moving around and systematically taking the enemy faction apart, and put some pitches in some really annoying places as you move, shoot close to their line, get within 16 inches, put down the pitcher, and possibly put it in a spot where they can't immediately shoot it. So if they're planning on moving out with some remotes or tags or heavy infantry, they're going to have to remove the pitcher first, which will cost them orders. That's really valuable. Let's move through, quickly talk about the Spectre. So the Spectre is, a fantastic model which has never been available in a Nomad Sectorial before, as far as I can recall, but now he is. His deal is you can take 3 of them now. You couldn't do that in regular Nomads. Any model in the game that has the combination of TO Camo, Infiltration, and Specialist is just gold, in my opinion. So for scenarios, anything from Comm Center to Acquisition to Supremacy, anything that needs you to have a Specialist out in the midfield is just going to be so powerful when you've got a Spectre. Willpower 14 is premium, and he's going to do a lot of fighting a lot of the time. You're spoiled for choice here, really. The Killer Hack is fantastic. The Deployable Repeater is fantastic. The Forward Observer is fantastic. I think the choice of the day goes to Forward Observer, though, because the Forward Observer cannot be hacked by their hackers out in the midfield. The Killer Hacker sort of doubles up on your job with the Interventor or Merry Problems. Being a Forward Observer is helpful for completing a classified. He's a couple of points cheaper than the Killer Hacker. Cyber Mines is great. I think anti-personnel mines in the long run will serve you better, just because you want a mine to deter their infiltrating specialist, for example. So I know it's boring. The Forward Observer is probably the best. There are some lists that you can make which have several of these guys. Like, imagine 3 multi-sniper Spectres hanging out around the back of the table, and then you've got your the rest of your list in there. I don't think you can take that and a Salamandra squad, but you could imagine 7 other orders of just pure, powerhouse Tunguska stuff. And on some really open, long line of sight tables, those Spectres are going to be amazing. And if you have some way of deleting their MSV2 model, let's say you've got Raul in there, and he's got combat jump. Let's say you've got a Tunguska Interventor Lieutenant, for example, to give him controlled jump. Let's say he does pull off the daring raid into their side of the table, lands there, blows up their Rouge Shi or their whatever they've got. Maybe you've got a situation where you can boarding shotgun into a Jaguar, and the template comes out and hits their intruder and kills them, and they've got no intruder, and you're sitting there with 3 Spectres. There's some possibilities there. I'm not saying this is the best, most competitive idea for a list, but it has a lot of potential, as you guys can appreciate. So 3 Spectres, really amazing. I don't think you should take 3, but if you wanted to, you could have the Forward Observer, Killer Hacker, and Deployable Repeater, for example. The Deployable Repeater able to, set up on one side the hacking, and the Killer Hacker on the other side can use it. If you're playing, say, a 400 or 500 point game where you can take lots of expensive stuff, you definitely want the Assault Hacking Device, because he stays in hidden deployment, and at the higher points level games, they're more likely to have hackable things, because they need to spend their points on expensive units, which are going to be hackable most likely, and the Spectre Assault Hacker is going to be wonderful there. Last but not least, we've got Perseus, the Rogue Murbanon. This guy's really interesting. It's cool how we can join a Securitate Link team. It's not so cool that they can't, use MSV2 to combo with his smoke. My thoughts are that if your plan is to move out with the Securitate Link team later in the game, having Perseus in there is better than having the Grenzer, because the Grenzer is slow. He's 4-2 speed, but Perseus keeps up with them. He throws smoke grenades to help them get into where they need to get. And he's that point man. The Securitates can't fight in close combat. This guy's unbelievable in close combat. And with NWI and ODD, benefiting from that 5-man link team and a breaker combi rifle. At that range, 8 to 16 kind of thing, he's going to be much better than the Securitates are at fighting as that spearhead. So in that third term of the game, you're moving out to win frontline or to win safe area or supremacy or something like that. He's going to be great. 34 points or whatever it is to be in that area is amazing too. If you take him by himself, he's got super jump, so he could sort of be a wannabe Holloman and jumping over there. He's just one guy though, BS13 combi. I'm not too sure if you're going to be spending all of your orders on that kind of attack, but it is possible. There is a special Haris team with Perseus, Spectre, and the Stemplazond. I think the idea there is that you go on a bit of an attacking run mid-game with these guys. I'm not too sure how much I like it though. It's quite expensive. And again, for that role of moving out and attacking things, there are other things for that. But it's definitely a flavorful choice. It's cool that it's got a DA close combat weapon, so it gives you a way of actually whacking those objectives and looting and sabotaging in the grid in close combat, which is nice. But yeah, I think the most viable way to run this guy would be in the link team with the Securitates. Really good with the smoke there, defending them with his nanopulsar, and when it comes time to move out, the ODD point man in a 5-man link. That's something you just don't see in LF, by the way, in Steel Phalanx, is a 5-man link team with ODD at the front. That's very rare, having like an ODD trooper as part of a 5-man link, so BS16, they're -6 in most cases. Your 4 dice on your breaker combi, or firing 2 nanopulsars, or throwing 2 smoke grenades, getting into close combat. He's got NWI, which is great, so a 34-point model, 33-point model in the case of the FTO. The stats you get for being in a 5-man link is pretty crazy, so really good if you can afford him. Then again, there's going to be some lists where it's just really tight. You're planning on using the Securitates as a defensive link only, and you need those extra points. Dropping him and taking just a Securitate for like 15 or 13 or whatever it costs is going to free up enough for a 20-point model somewhere else. Damn, what a fun sectorial. I don't know if I'm going to be buying the models for these guys, but I'm definitely going to be playing these guys on Tabletop Simulator. I've already had 2 games with them. Both of them were victories. I was playing I was playing Capture and Protect, and my opponent had obviously the Jammer in there for Varuna, and then somebody in Twitch chat reminded me that I had Veteran on the Securitates, which was amazing. If you guys haven't already checked it out, please have a look at some of the Tabletop Simulator games we're posting on YouTube. Please come and say hi to us over on Discord. You might want to hang out with Discord just so you can chat with us or observe or just see what people are talking about. And of course on Twitch. I am streaming games at the moment on Twitch. If you just want to watch, just watch. If you want to come and commentate, you can obviously type stuff into chat and like commentate in the game and tell us when we got things wrong. But it'd be great to see you come by. Alrighty, I think that does it for a little while. Tunguska, really cool faction. Hope you guys enjoy them. Any questions, please ask, and I'll be around. See you guys later.